thrilled. And this is the only official part. Welcome to the podcast. Most people don't, but you do. That's the name of it. You heard that message a lot yesterday. Thank you for bringing me to speak at your Peak Summit. Appreciate it. Today we are with José Suquet. He is the chairman of the board and CEO of Pan American Life Insurance Group, based out of New Orleans.
Yes.
Phenomenal history. 1911, am I right?
That's correct.
You have been at the lead for over 20 years doing some amazing things.
That's correct.
We're excited to just talk to you, about your story, about your vision, and how you're bringing it to life. I have been so utterly impressed with your team. And I want to give you compliments. Knowing what I know of you already, you're probably going to deflect them to other people. But the values that I have found in the people over the last 2 days surpasses what I would expect with any business. Whether it's a successful business or a not successful business, the values, the people, the kindness, and the caring is outrageous. Thank you for your leadership for that.
Sure.
Where does that come from?
I think it's from all of the scars and welts that I have from years of experiences of other organizations and other leaders, both good and bad leaders, because you learn a lot from good leaders, and you learn just as much, and perhaps if not more, of what not to do from other types of leaders. And when I left my prior company, which had a tendency of being very political, I just made that voluntary decision to leave. And it was a giant company of which I was privileged to have risen up and be one of the top 5 officers of a large public company. And I just felt I wanted to take my time to venture into something else. I really thought I was going to retire at that time. I was 45 years old. And it just a lot of the things that I wanted for but I didn't want to repeat. And so I could have easily gone to work for one of the major insurance companies in the Northeast and come in as the number 2 or 3 guy, and I just didn't want to go through that again.
You wanted to be able to instill your values into something new.
That's right.
Instead of having people implement their values and their cultures on you, you had a chance to bring your values to Pan American.
I took my time, I interviewed, I actually hung up a consulting shingle and had an opportunity to do some consulting projects for some very large organizations that household names in the consulting world or investment banking world, and then continued to receive calls from search firms, and one called with a little company in New Orleans. We were living a really great life on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and with a house, beautiful home in Long Island, and one son that had just started at the University of Virginia, the other one that was a junior in high school. My wife was just thriving, involved in the community, lots of friends. And so I went down, and I was also interviewing to buy a company with private equity backing. But I went down for this little company and found that the history of this company with its roots in Latin America was very appealing to me. And they had a very clean financial picture despite having a very jumbled, mixed up strategy that had not worked for them. And the strategy had just really been all over the place. But they had $300 million of capital at the time, and versus the private equity company, I would have also been the guy in charge, but I would have been on a search for capital for my entire rest of my career. And I felt, this is right up my alley. This is what I want to do. This other company was in my honey, I really think I have found the right position. And this is 2.5 years after I quit my last job. And so she was ready for me to do something. It was like the old saying, for better or worse, but not for lunch. And she was ready. And so she got all excited. I said, but I don't know if you're going to think it's the greatest thing. So it's right up my alley. It's taking advantage of some of my strengths with Latin America. I can really turn this company around, but it's in New Orleans. And we leave the Upper East Side and all the little benefits associated
good
with
life,
that.
good community.
Great life.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was her reaction?
She wasn't too happy.
Okay.
She really loved where she was at. We had been married 28 years at that time. Now we're married 48. And she backed me. And I commuted for the first year and a half. And she said, if that's what you want to do, I'll do it.
Wow.
And then I started November of 2004. August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit.
Oh, goodness.
And she tested my resolve after Katrina because we had bought our house about 6 weeks before Katrina and had done all the interior demolition for the remodeling. And it took over a year to finish it because we couldn't find any workers. And she kept testing me. It's not too late to come back.
We can go back.
It's not a problem. And I said, no, I really like this. I think it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And it proved to be true.
Yeah, obviously.
And when at that time, New Orleans was in search of people that wanted to move there.
Yeah, and invest in the community.
And invest in the community, exactly. And this company was a wonderful old line New Orleans company that had just struggled in their way, but had kept this very strong set of financials, but just didn't know where they were going.
Yeah, and they needed someone like you.
Yeah.
I want to back up.
So that's where the values started, by just a lot of them saying, what are the things that you really learned from the past that you really want to change?
Yes. So can you share with us one example, you don't need to mention names, of a great, because to be able to share their experiences. Thank you. Without necessarily giving away a name, can you give us an example of what you learned from the best leader as one, and then what you learned from the worst leader? You don't need to share any names.
Sure. I think the best leader was my former CEO that always put his people first.
People first.
Always put the people first. Always had a very even tempered, would react at some point, but always put the people first, always took the time to really understand the situation at hand, made sure that if you were undertaking a new initiative, really understood and needed to make sure that the organization was aligned properly to carry out the new initiative, that the resources were there to back the organization,
Brilliant.
and that you had the right people to lead the organization and carry out the mission with the resources.
Okay, I'm learning. For our listeners, let me recap. People first.
Yes.
Calm, consistent demeanor, and ensuring that the resources, the tools were there to be able to help the people, but people first. And is that how you are now leading Pan American Life Insurance Group?
Yeah, yes, and I would add one more thing. He would tell his people, including me, in the polite way that he was, he says, look, I really, excuse me for micromanaging, but you really need it. And so he would interject himself when needed. And you know what? When you say it that way, you welcome it.
Yeah.
And so I find myself, at the beginning, I would say a lot.
Yeah, hey, do you mind? I'm going to talk to you about something. Is that okay? And something that I learned, and I love that story, Jose, something that I had learned from someone that had referenced a couple of things. Before you speak, is it kind, is it necessary, and is it true?
Yes.
So that's just to make sure that we are speaking and not speaking ill will of anyone else. And that's like Socrates. But then another person had shared, and this is a psychologist out of Britain, Great Britain, had said, I seek your greatest good, I mean you no harm. Can we have a conversation?
Yes.
And so diffusing it, just like your boss and
absolutely.
just like you're doing it, why not diffuse? Because leaders, from my perception, and I've talked to thousands of leaders and I have seen thousands of leaders, you don't need to make people cry if you're the boss.
You don't, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he would always treat people, no matter what levels they were, with the same respect. And I've always done that, but at Pan American, we have a fellow that has been with the company 45 years. He is in charge of the mailroom, and you could eat off the floor of that mailroom. And I make sure every time I go walking around, I go in that mailroom and just compliment him and make him feel that he makes a difference. And it doesn't matter. We're all going to go to the same place at some point. And the big guy is not going to judge whether I was the CEO or I was in the mailroom. Was I a good human being? And that's the philosophy that I try and just make people feel that they matter, make people feel good about themselves.
And I know it's authentic coming from you. I will go back to that question. Can you share with us, without naming names, unless you want to, a lesson that you learned from the worst leader as to what not to do? What sticks with you? What comes to mind?
I think I'm not going to mention names. It's not fair without somebody being able to rebut. But I'd say leaving you hanging, leaving you out in a difficult situation and not backing you one way or another. Jose, you don't have, perhaps instead of silence or agreeing with the naysayers saying, Jose, you don't have that right. Let me explain what we discussed. Oh, okay, you're right there. That's what I would do. But leaving you out dry would not be good. I think the other piece is not being consistent in your actions and behavior.
Okay.
That's very important to me, the consistency. And that consistency is built on experience and your own conviction of how you feel your business should be running. Because it doesn't come just by happenstance.
No.
It really comes from your personal experiences that got you to this point. And anything else, you're shooting from the hip.
So what we're learning, again, it's going back to people first, still, how you're treating them, caring, conviction, consistency, contemplation, demeanor. It's this. And for people that are listening, I am making my hands appear to go across a horizontal line. Goodness. But I love that. I want to get back to, I'm just learning that if I ask someone, is Jose a salesperson? Should I reference that? They're like, oh my gosh, he's a salesperson. He was one of the top salespeople, XYZ. Do you still consider yourself a salesperson? And I want to add a little thing on to that. Because salespeople in the life insurance industry might not always be regarded as
Successful insurance person has to put themselves in the shoes of the prospect or customer that they're speaking with by understanding their need. And do they have a need to protect the future income of the family? Do they have a need to fund their mortgages, the education of their children, so on? Their various needs. And I think putting yourself by understanding the needs of your client is very important. And then being empathetic to those needs is very important. And that's something that I have tried to do. And I think as I've also gotten older, I've come to realize that this is a humble profession, because you are there. You're really not selling a vase of flowers. You're not selling a shiny new car or a new electronic gadget. You're selling a promise that during one of your most difficult times in life, a time of crisis, either you or your business, we will be there to deliver cash, money, resources when you are in crisis, personally, financially, in your life or in your business enterprise. And that's something very important, which then turns it around. And one of the things that I've always gone around to our salespeople, how important it is to continue the financial strength of our company.
Yes.
sheet. And that I had to sell quite a bit to our distributors and our agents and brokers.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the last conferences in 2019, we were in Berlin, and a lot of the brokers, they were very interested in getting the best performing product, best state-of-the-art service, and of course, the highest possible commissions. And something's got to give, or you're not going to be able to deliver any of those 30 years from now. And I would do this in front of 500 people. Doing that, some of them would look at me cross-eyed, and what do you mean by that? That really came loud and clear during COVID.
Yes.
And for us, that we're a mid-sized company now with our growth, we paid $300 million of excess COVID claims during a 2-year period. It's a lot of money for our size company.
And did you have to?
No, as a matter of fact,
And that's the point, please.
No, at first, fortunately, the reinsurance companies changed their minds, but most insurance companies have reinsurance as a backstop. And in the reinsurance treaties, many of them don't cover pandemics.
Yes.
And so our actuary said, they're not going to cover the pandemics. And I said, we do.
Yeah.
We can't leave these people. It doesn't matter. We just have to cover these people. How could we, in good conscience, have somebody that has a $2 million policy, even though our retention is $1 million?
Yep.
How could we not pay them the full amount? Now, we said, I will go. We will take a few CEOs from other companies, and the reinsurers came back around. But that first few months, it was the Wild West during COVID. People were dying left and right. You had no idea where the beginning was and where the end was going to be. And so it took a lot of inside fortitude to make that call. But to date, I still have people that get choked up that say, you made that decision. And I said, what else was I going to do?
Yeah. So I just want to ask you to pause there, and I want to say thank you. And I heard that story from so many people yesterday, that you used your persuasive skills in a good way, not in a salesy way. Empathy, understanding the needs of people, 7.1 million lives. You used your selling skills to push, to convince, to gather, to be kind over right. Policy didn't say that we had to do this, but we were being kind. That is amazing, and I want the world to know how special Pan American Life Insurance Group is. You are special, and thank you for that.
And it wasn't just us, though. The entire insurance industry delivered for the world globally. It showed just what a valuable piece of the world economy insurance is. Because who knows? We happen to have safety nets with the government programs that the United States introduced, but a lot of countries didn't. One of the few backstops were the insurance programs that we had.
Yeah. And here's a lovely example of José Suquet, chairman of the board, CEO of Pan American Life Insurance Group, deflecting compliments. And I'm looking at our friends in the room also, deflecting compliments. I'm going to say thank you anyway. And I need to talk about deflecting compliments, and from my perspective, your humbleness. And after I ask this question, I want to learn a little bit about your background coming to this country. But your humbleness, I will never forget. Weeks ago when we were doing the planning for my keynote presentation, we're having discussions, and you had made a statement to your senior leaders that sometimes there's cloudiness and there's uncertainty in the world. Let me reassure you. And you went and you said, if you look back in history, this happened, and here we're fine. And a couple of years before that, this happened in history, and now we're fine. And as long as we remain humble, and I wrote down that word, Jose, as long as we remain humble and remember what we're doing and why we're doing it, trust for life. That is just, thank you. And I want you again to please take it into your heart. My thanks to you for your values, which then leads to one of our final questions. And thank you so much for spending this much time already. Your values when you grew up. Born in Cuba, can you tell us about moving to America and perhaps some of the values that your family or your relatives influenced you because you're a good human being. You're doing the right thing for the right reasons. You're not all about profits, you're about people first. That had to come from somewhere. And I'd like our listeners to learn your story about what influenced those great values, Jose.
We came when I was 2 years old in 1959. We had to. My entire family was with fervent anti-Castro, anti-communist, and so we had to leave right away. And we were exiled in Mexico for a few months. And my father died later that year in late 1959, and I had turned 3. So my mother raised me on her own throughout the years, and then in Miami first, and then when I was in about the 5th or 6th grade, we moved to New York, and we moved to, this is from a woman that was voted the most beautiful woman in Cuba in 1956-57 to working in the United States as a seamstress in a factory. And so I just observed the value of hard work. She would read her magazines in Spanish to me and I would repeat it. So that's where I started to learn and became bilingual. And then I went to college while working. Actually high school. I went to Power Memorial High School, which is now doesn't exist. And I went there because I thought I could play basketball. And in grammar school I played, and somehow I thought I could try out for the best basketball team in New York City. That's where Lou Alcindor, Kareem Jabbar graduated from.
Okay.
But then the guards in my freshman year were 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, and you're not
they
6'3",
were dunking
6'4", yeah.
and I'm going like that. There's no way. But I stayed and worked in high school, and I would open up a chock full of nuts. You know that brand in New York City?
No.
Chock full of nuts is that heavenly coffee. The subway to school and work and come and close the restaurant at 7, 8 o'clock at night. Wow. And I did that for a couple of years, and then went to Fordham University. And across the street from me lived a young lady, a young girl. And as I was turning 14, I bumped into this young girl that was 11, and she ended up, her parents moved her to a suburb, Long Island, New York, and I continued to chase her. And
this was at 14 years old?
Yeah, and she was 11. And then I just turned 14, so 13 and a half, 14. And so I continued to chase her. And being of Cuban family herself, we were 17, 16, 18, and we had to have a chaperone everywhere, even a Sunday afternoon movie. Okay. I had to have the 2 aunts and 2 cousins accompany me, and I had to pay for them all. And I convinced her. She got a full scholarship to go to Stanford, and her parents said, "No, you're not going to go all the way to California." And so I convinced her to go to Fordham. In her freshman year at 18, and I was 20.
So you're telling me you caught this girl?
I did.
And tell us your wife's name?
Ileana.
Ileana. Shout out to Ileana for being pursued and being caught by you.
So she's
in almost 50 years now,
she's
correct?
Stuck almost 50 years.
Such a great story.
And she stuck with me every step of the way. And then we did our MBA together. Okay. And she was, the reason she got a full boat to Stanford, she was a quantitative genius.
Goodness.
So she got me through all the quantitative statistics, calculus in the MBA class, and I mastered the BS stuff, the management and marketing. So we made a great study group together.
Phenomenal.
And then I do remember when I graduated Fordham, I was all excited. I went home with her and my mother, and I said, I got a job. And they were all, finally, he's got a job. And I go, what is it? I said, I'm going to become an insurance agent. And they're like, oh my God, what's this? And okay, what's your salary? What are they going to pay you? They had 2 plans. They had a salary and a small commission, but then they had a really big commission and a bonus on top of that. So I decided I didn't want to have a salary. And my mother, I thought, was going into...
Obviously.
And we did our MBA after that. I ran a business got promoted to go from New York to Miami to run a business for Equitable at the time. And a couple of other quick stories. I got to 28. I go there and my management team at the time is waiting, all easily 10 to 15 to 20 years older. And there's this one guy waiting as I'm speaking with his arms crossed, the Cuban guy, and he's easily 15 years older. And he's got this look, and the meeting's over. And I go, listen, are you okay? You weren't really very talkative. Is everything okay? He says, I need to show you something. And very dramatic, and he puts a yellow newspaper that was in a plastic, and he shows the headline of a Mexican newspaper. His father was the president-elect of Cuba before Castro, and my father was a senator. They were both exiled, and there was this young man that was about 18 holding a toddler of 2 years old in his lap, and I was the toddler, and he was the young man, and he was now working for me at 28. So that was a fabulous story throughout the years. And then,
and Jose, so growing up, you wanted to learn. Obviously, you're smart. You knew what you wanted. You chased your wife for that many years. Was it easy growing up? Was it an easy childhood?
No, not at all.
Okay. What were some of the hardships? Did you have siblings?
We have a staple that's similar to a potato called malanga in Cuba. I brought home yuca, which is a similar, and I brought home the little ends of the yuca, which she just started laughing. So that means it was like 25 cents to basically eat boiled starches with a little olive oil and salt, of course.
Okay.
But we would always set the table and all that. So no, it was not...
Siblings, brothers, sisters?
No, only half brothers, a half brother and 2 half sisters.
Okay.
But I did not grow up with them. So it was just me and her.
Yeah.
And some uncles and aunts that were extended family, but we always lived alone.
Yeah. And what was some of the greatest lessons she taught you? You watched her go from beauty queen to seamstress?
Yes, that is correct.
What is one thing that you
One of the biggest
her?
things, not in those words, but she always instilled on me just by her that we were broke, we were not poor.
Amazing.
Which is a big difference. So I never that I was broke, which means that I can be unbroke again.
Yes.
And that was probably the key thing that I learned from my mother.
In growing up that way, did that drive you to want to become successful in the insurance world?
That was a big thing. Sales to me was the way, the way to control my destiny was sales and the sales environment, and then leading people. And once I was successful in 1 year, I got an opportunity to move into sales management while continuing to sell. And I just felt that I could leverage my ability by recruiting and developing and selling with my agents, and I just felt always sales was the biggest career.
Is your mother still alive?
No, unfortunately, 20 years ago this June, she died here in Miami.
I'm sorry. Was she able to see your success?
Somewhat. She would love it now. Yeah. She really did not get to fully grasp Pan American and the whole story of how we were in Cuba and a very amazing story with Pan American, because the reason it's in New Orleans is New Orleans was what Miami is today. It was the gateway for Latin America. Atlanta have taken over with their airports and all that. New Orleans just wasn't able to keep up. But I want to keep the company headquartered in New Orleans, but she never really appreciated the rich culture and history of the Latin American influence on Pan American.
And, I mean, what a perfect fit. And I met some of your team members from all over Latin America, all over the Caribbean, and it just makes me understand the 7.1 million lives that you're helping to protect in 22 countries. It is just a phenomenal feat with what you and your team are doing. And the goal of this was to have our listeners get to know you as a person, and then they're going to become a raving fan of Pan American Life Insurance Group. And the funny thing, we've heard so many amazing stories. I heard from Marta, whenever she first joined the company, she told her father when she went home, guess what? I got a new job. I'm going to be working for this company. And she wasn't sure of her dad's reaction until he went into the back room and pulled out some files and pulled out a piece of paper and said, it's a good fit. This is the company that has been protecting us since you were born.
That's wonderful.
And I don't even know if Martha had shared that with you. So Martha, thank you for sharing that story. It's just so meaningful of what you are doing. Two last quick questions. Yesterday we were talking about now to next, and this sigmoid curve, which I was being able to discuss, and reinventing yourself. There were so many different tactics and strategies that were discussed, confidential of course, but is there anything that you can share about what enables you as a leader to encourage your team to think about the future?
Yes. I loved your analogy about the bananas, that a green banana
it's growing.
is growing, and once that banana gets ripe, you better do something about it or it's going to rot.
Yeah.
And we're not at that point yet, but we have been doing and reinventing ourselves and adding new avenues of growth inadvertently. And I got trained on the concept of the S-curve a number of years ago, and I said, let's do it now on purpose while we're in a position of strength. And I had to wait. I had been thinking about this, but then COVID hit, and we had 20 and 21 that our earnings dropped first time, and now 22, they started coming back up, 23. So we were going to have this meeting in late 24. For other reasons, we decided to postpone it. But I said, okay, what's the next big thing? Now that we got through COVID, we not only survived, we prospered, we reinvented certain business practices during COVID to keep thriving. And now what is the next big thing? So that's really, you can, if you sit still, you're not going to be cruising. You're going to be looking at the people passing you by.
Yes. And we shared so many different examples of companies that went out of business because they weren't thinking about next.
No.
And just you sharing your thought process of, I was trained on the S-curve, I understood it, but it wasn't time yet to release it to our team because it wasn't quite ready to do that. So thank you for your vision of that. The name of the podcast, the name of the company, most people don't. Would you just fill in the blank for me? Most people don't blank.
I thought about this, and most people don't listen. And God gave us one mouth and two ears for a reason, to listen, because if you listen more, you can really, when the words finally come out of your mouth, they are more impactful because you understand, just like when you understand the needs of a customer, you will be more effective when you make a recommendation. When you understand the problems of an employee, when you understand issues that are preventing you from moving forward with an initiative, you understand. But if you already come with preconceived notions of what's going on, so it's just so important in life, in business, to listen first as a leader before you give your own opinion.
Phenomenal. Listen, think next, think about the future, take care of people first, treat people with kindness and empathy, care, be your authentic self. So many great, not only leadership lessons, but as I'm listening, I'm getting sales lessons from you as well as our listeners. So thank you so much.
It's
José
been a pleasure, Bart.
Suquet,
and
Chairman of the board.
Thank you for your great chat with our people. They were quite motivated.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And then I do have a gratitude stone for you, and our listeners know what this means. This is a very special one. If I may place it in your hand, green aventurine, That is for good vibrations.
Thank you.
And positive things.
Thank you
so
very much.
you bring it to the table every single day, but it's just a reminder, things are good, we are good, life is good. Pan American Life Insurance Group is even better. So thank you again.
Thanks
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you.